So at some point, quite early on in the pandemic, me and my husband decided, oh, we might as well go home out of it. And we decided to move back to Newfoundland from Montreal. And I was in Montreal for about 13 years. And in that time, we lived in a lot of one-bedroom apartments that were painted a shade of color that I refer to as landlord white. And in that 13 years, I became very fond of landlord white, and I think that that is the color a wall should be. So we moved back to Newfoundland, and we moved into this house, and the house was like teenage angst purple, maybe from the late 90s, early 2000s, and like my office, the room where my office was like a dismal apricot. And the house was wonderful, but it was very dismal. And so I was like, okay, before we move anything in, we're painting everything white. And it's like, we're going to go to the hardware store and we're going to buy a bunch of white paint and we're going to paint the house. But you can't just do that. You can't just go in and say, I want white paint. They're like, well, what kind of white do you want? What kind of light reflections do you want? Do you want it to reflect young? Do you want it to reflect blue? It's like, no, I want it to be white. So anyway, finally we got our white paint. And then it's like, well, now I've got to paint the house. And you know what? I am not a professional house painter. But that doesn't really matter. That's what this song is about. Paint settled in the fibers of the carpet on one edge where the tape was less secure. I did my best to soak it up, but latex hardens much too swiftly for my reflexes to stare. Well, there go all my efforts for a clean job. There go my endeavors for a perfect home. But in the grand scheme of things, I guess it doesn't really matter. In the grand scheme of things, I poured over too many shades of white. Who knew such a number could exist? It was far more complicated than I was expecting, and by the end of it, just kind of picked one. Well, there goes all that time that I spent thinking. There goes all my planning, all my careful choice. But in the grand scheme of things, I guess it doesn't really matter. In the grand scheme of things, what matters is the house is not so dark now. What matters is the feeling of renewal. What matters is a place to sip our coffee. So many jagged edges where a hole was cut for piping, or a molding isn't quite flush to the wall. I broke so many tiny brushes made of foam just trying to jam that paint into those corners. When I was all done, there were still spaces, places that I missed where the old shows through. But in the grand scheme of things, I guess it doesn't really matter.